you've been playing in Wes Unseld Junior's system for a little while now. What are kind of the responsibilities for the point guard? Do they differ from other teams and other systems?
Nah, for me, the coach doesn't have to give me the responsibility, the job of a point guard for me. When I was started as a child, my dad, put the responsibilities on me as a point guard. And then as I got older, high school coach, Skip, Dino, Jeff Battle, they stayed on me at Wake Forest. So I've tried to keep that, with me. And so I know the responsibilities of it. And so for me, it's just always reading the game. I think so many times I can think of like two instances, the Cleveland game and then the Houston game. To me, you don't have to, in those situations when I specifically think about it, you got to get good shots. And the last 3 or 4 minutes are important to know the plays to run. You might see a play in the first half that you might seen it work, and you might want to keep it in your back pocket and just play out of flow. So when it comes down to like those last 3 minutes, you can pull that play back out your pocket. For coaches, responsibilities are the same as every other coach I've had. It's a big responsibility. And that's why I tell people all the time, like, it's a lot of guys masquerading as point guards. Like, it just is, because it's a thinking man's job. And, sometimes people get frustrated and they see scoring and different things like that. But, I always say it. Skip used to always tell us, you don't criticize success, you analyze it. And look at Chris Paul. He's a throwback point guard, and he got Phoenix rolling. So it is a thinking man's job. Don't get me wrong. I love the scoring. I love those two guards who can really score and make plays for other people. But Coach Unseld puts a huge responsibility on it, and it's a responsibility that you can handle. Specifically, I think myself can handle, and so you just kind of reading, trying to figure out throughout the game, kind of playing with pace. It's reading the game, and a lot of people don't read it. Sometimes you get in those instances, like I said, the Cleveland Houston game, where you slow the whole game down. And that's on me. You don't slow the whole game down. You keep playing. That don't mean you come down and take quick shots. You just keep down, and we keep coming down, and we play in flow, whatever our flow is at that moment. Could be open, could be swing, whatever the case is, to where we get the ball from side to side and we get a good shot. That's kind of settling the gym down. It's not always slowing it down, running a play, because that can take time. You only got 24 seconds on the shot clock. The responsibility is great, and it's just like any other coach.
So as much as the position may evolve, like as much as like other positions have completely changed, like the big man position,
Right.
the principles of being a point guard have maintained ultimately the same throughout your life.
Heck yeah. Like you have to be able to make plays for others. You got to be able to score when it needs to be done. And then you got to read the game. Sometimes you got to just spot up and allow somebody else to run the offense or run the plays. So it's really reading the game, the pace of the game, the flow of the game. If you're playing against a team that likes to play fast, that doesn't mean you run with them, but what you do is you play at your pace. If it's a team that like to play slow, then you pick up the pace and you play a little faster. I think people think fast is erratic. No, it just means that you're playing with pace and with a flow. And so it's all about reading the game. And to me, like, sometimes you can slow the whole gym down and the game down, but that can be difficult, in a flow of a game. Like Coach said, I remember we was in Houston, he can't use all his timeouts. So in those situations and moments, it's a responsibility of the point guard to be like, yo, we're good. It's the flow of the game. I always say this. People go through highs and lows in their emotions. It's calming everybody's emotions down, knowing everything's okay. You got to be you're the quarterback. You got to be the calming effect when everybody's going up and down in their personality and their emotions. So it's a lot to it. The great ones, the Magics, Isaiah, CP, Steph is special. All those guys, they have a way of doing it. And I like the new age point guards. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a little bit of a throwback.
The Clippers lost, which you weren't here for. They gave up 35 points.
Yeah.
had the team watch the entire second half together. Was there a similar film session after the Rockets game?
No, sir. It wasn't. Coach just came over to our offensive cleanups, our defensive cleanups. Coach is really good at reading the room, the flow, everybody's personality. And I think everybody kind of beat themselves up in that game, knowing that we was up 24, ended up losing by 18? So what's that? Let me do my math. 24 is 34, 42-point turnaround.
Yeah.
So I just, in those situations, you got to kind of play the way you got the lead. But it's so organized, chaotic, like we were playing in that first half. It wasn't erratic or crazy. Houston plays with a pace and a flow and an aggressiveness. They put a lot of pressure on your one-on-one defense. Put a lot of pressure on you in general because you don't know where shots are coming from, how they're going to get done, whatever the case is. That's in those situations where, like I said, you calm it down, come down in your flow, move the ball from side to side, and calm the gym down when it gets crazy.
I know you guys are not out there, but how are you approaching the last of
Yeah, let me try to say it in a nice way. Now, you know what? For me, every time that ball bounces, I give it 120%. And that's the thing that I want anybody that watches me play to see. Like he goes out there and he gives you everything he has. Obviously I'm thankful. Lord's blessed me with a gift, so I enjoy to play the game. And hopefully you guys see that joy out there on the floor. But I'm gonna give it everything I got. So for me, things doesn't change. I'm gonna give it all. Obviously a little disappointed that we're not out of it, statistically, but who knows? We can make a crazy run and go 11 in a row. Anything's possible. But for me, it's just every day, like you said, like just coming in, giving everything you got. These fans, DC and people around the league, they play their hard-earned money. And so it's our job to give them everything we have and give them the gift that we've been blessed with. And so my mindset doesn't change. Continue to play the same way, and it always works out at the end.
How do you want the young guys, Denny, Corey, really, approach these things and take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, same way. You gotta and this is the thing people don't understand. Like you have to give it all. So many retired players that I play with, and the thing that they always want to come back to play. Your body doesn't hold up. Like surgeons can go for, lawyers can go for, but when you play this sport, you have a small window. And I've been blessed to play 12 years and counting. And so some people didn't make it to 12 years. Some people didn't make it to 8 years. And so every time you hit that floor, you have to give it all because somebody's watching you play that might have never watched you play. And that might inspire them to be an NBA player or to be at your level. And they come up to you when they're older and be like, I remember watching you play. And now you're watching them play, or now your children are playing with them. So, you always can get better. They're so young. And I think the game of basketball, you can always get better. There's no ceiling on how, unless you're making every shot. And nobody out here is making every shot. So I think you can always get better. And those guys will continue to develop and get better. And I think throughout this year, last year, they just continue to get better. So that's something for them. They can continue to grow on, and it's our job to, continue to push them for them to get better.
Speaking of making every shot, not making every shot, but Rui's 3-point shooting is 50%.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, Rui, man, he's special, man. I'm telling you, Rui, I had him when I was young, and so when he was young, I'm sorry, his first year. And so remember he came in, it was mid-range, and everybody was begging him to improve his 3-point shooting. And he worked really hard with Coach Gorey Gaines. And now, it's really not anything on the floor. We already know he's an unbelievable mid-range shooter. Now he's shooting 50% from 3-point line. He's really good on post-ups, mismatches, finishing it in face up. So Rui, he's got a lot of skill. He's got a lot of skill, and he's just tapping into it.
Talk about playing fast, obviously, how long have you been fast? Like, were you always the fastest kid? And where'd your speed come from? Is there like someone in your family who got it from?
The Lord. Honestly, I have a cousin, Alicia Gainey. She ran track for UNC Charlotte. She was actually really good, and then transferred to Western Carolina. She's fast. She's really fast, actually. So maybe, some genes down the line as far as speed. But other than that, like I have always been the fastest. I was blessed with speed. The Lord truly blessed me with speed, and I try to utilize it as much as I can. So, yeah, I've always been the fastest. And people don't understand, like, playing with speed is one thing. Playing with speed and control is another thing. And that's another thing that I was blessed with. A lot of people can play fast. They just play fast and out of control. I would like to think that I have some sense of control. Half the time when you guys are watching me play, I don't know what I'm doing out there, but it works. So, it's an anointing, so I'm blessed.
All right, Ish, we'll switch over to Zoom for a few questions. We'll start with Josh.
Ish, as you've just demonstrated, you know what it takes to handle the ball. And I'm curious how you would evaluate the way Denny does it and makes plays, because he seems to be getting many more opportunities lately to do that.
Yeah, Denny's getting better at it. I heard overseas he was really good at it. So, he has a lot of different aspects on the floor that he can thrive at. And I think coaches trying to tap into those areas, whether it's in pick and rolls, whether it's spot up shooting, whether it's playing off the catch and go defensively. So he has a lot of, attributes out there on the floor. And I think they're kind of coming out slowly but surely, like out there on the floor. And I think coach is trying to tap into it. He was really good in pick and rolls against Houston in the first half. And he was really good against Denver, pick and rolls. So he has the ability to handle the ball and make some plays. And so he'll just continue to get better.
In terms of his height, how much of an advantage does that give him, assuming that all other things are equal, like the ability to control the ball deftly?
Yeah, no, like size is important. It's crazy because it used to be a time back in the days where you get a kid that was like 6'9", it was like impressive. Now when I walk into the league, everybody's got 4'6'9" dudes. Like it's pretty impressive. What are they feeding the kids? Maybe I just came out at the wrong time, but it really does help. I seen them make a move on Dennis, and Dennis is a really good defender, Schroeder, and he just used his strength off the dribble handoff, and was able to just see over him and finish over top of him. So, in those aspects and those things, he on switches. When you're driving baseline and you can see over defenders, see over the big man, it's really impressive. And he continues to grow. He continues to get better. And like I said, it's 6'9". It's a huge advantage.
Thank you very much, Ish. And I'm
Yes,
saying
sir.
that as a 5'7.5" person. So thank you.
I'm saying and a half. I'd like to have you put it.
We'll go to Christos.
Hey, Ish, hope you're doing well. You in the last couple of games, you had the great game against the Lakers, a great first half against the Rockets, and the bad second half against the Rockets. How could you describe those ups and downs on the way that you play?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. The Houston game, I was frustrated because for me, how can I explain this, Christos? Like, so for me, like, I looked at the turnover I had, and then like the two missed shots, I wasn't happy about. But for me, like it's a flow in the game, and it's easier to kind of like think about it. It's hard to explain, and so for me, I get a little frustrated because you feel the pulse of the game and you know what you can do to help your team. But, you know, in those situations and moments, you know, whatever you were thinking, it didn't come out on the floor. So for me, you don't get too high, you don't get too low. I've been in this league for 12 years, Christos. You just keep chopping away, but you evaluate your game. I'm not one to be like, man, like, oh, I'm gonna just turn the page. Nah, heck, nah. Like I watched the tape in the second half of Houston and was like, oh, okay, I see where I can exploit. See where I can be aggressive in those moments, in those situations. And so you grow from them and try not to make the same mistake twice. If you see it again, the game, you watch film, but you might not ever see that situation ever again. But you watch film to see if that moment comes up, you know, how to be, be aggressive. But you just got to kind of flow and play and get better, you know, game by game. And so put two halves together and try to, you know, move from there.
And as a playmaker of this team, seeing the progress, the progress and the growth this team made as the games goes on, seeing the potential that your team has, and the young players that your young teammates, how confident you feel about the future of this group?
I feel very confident. I think skill-wise, we got a lot of skill. And so now what you have to do is take the skill, the heart, the will that Coach Wes has inside of him, and we have to take that to the floor and sustain it for 48 minutes. You see flashes of it for 24 minutes, for 36 minutes, for 40 minutes. You know, even the Lakers game, we won that game, but Christos, let's be honest, like we didn't play well the first half. And actually we didn't play well until about the middle of the third. And then we looked like a team that was that you know, people that the fans could be excited about, and the future is very, very bright. So it's just sustaining it, you know, over a 48-minute time.
All right, Ish, you are all set. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
I guess I'll ask about that game, you know, after having reviewed the film, especially from the second half.
Well, I think he offensively, we started stagnating a bit. You know, had a 13 assists, I believe, in that first half, or 19 rather, and only 5 in the second. And some of that you couple with making shots. So I get that part, but just not getting bored with the process. Where we generated easy offense, you know, early in the first quarter. Saw it dip a little bit in the second. In the third quarter, I thought we got away from it. Part of it is because we didn't get the payoff. You know, from, you know, sustaining how we played those first quarter and a half. And then you fight that temptation where it's like, all right, well, I got to do more. Not necessarily. I think individually, we just have to stay with what we're doing, stay with what works, and just understand the law of averages will come back to us.
How's Kyle feeling?
He did. He was a partial participant. I think we'll list him as still questionable for tomorrow. But I think he's progressing, so it's a good thing. I don't think it's anything serious, but just to make sure he's good and comfortable, you know, being out there, I think is important. But we'll see.
It might come down to the game time decision.
Yeah, I'm most likely I'm doubtful. That's my opinion, but I'm still hopeful that, you know, that things can progress and it'll be clear.
And how beneficial have the last 2 weeks been for Rumi? Just getting an opportunity to start, you know, facing the opponent starters, playing with starters.
I think it's a great part. It's a good part about it. I mean, I know it's tough when you don't have one of your better players out there, in Kyle, but you know, Rui stepped up, and you had a great start the other night. I think it's good experience regardless. He's been a starter before, so I don't think it's anything he's not accustomed to. Getting his minute threshold up is important to see where he is, and also those, you know, crunch moments. I think any opportunity you can have young players out there in critical junctures of the game, there's exponential growth. And you can't simulate those minutes and those opportunities.
So when he's starting, I guess he just has to be more mindful of trying not to foul early on as well.
That's a big piece, you know. And once again, if you're guarding marquee matchups, which he will, being able to defend without fouling, not only keeps you on the floor, but it puts us behind the eight ball a lot. We've talked about that at length, and I thought overall did a decent job against Houston, knowing that they were at that point number one free throw shooting team as far as attempts, and we only fouled 13, but some of those fouls were in inopportune times. And early in the game, you can't foul and take yourself out of the game, but also allow your opponent to parade to the line.
What happened against the Rockets to the Clippers. And, after the Clippers game, you had the team watch the entire second half of the game, right? How did you approach the film session?
Well, I compared it, but I also made the point, though, it was a different group. Obviously we were a different team, but unfortunately, we've seen, some of this from quarter to quarter. It's not necessarily a whole half. We watched, about 20 minutes of film, not necessarily the whole half, but certain segments, but also just clips. And the biggest piece, as far as trying to find ways to sustain our play is understanding the flow, especially offensively. The defensive stuff is pretty cut and dry. Our transition defense was poor. Some of that was bad shots, broken possessions, turnovers. And the other piece was, offensively, we can't stagnate. Ball's got to move. We got to make sure we stay organized. But showing all those things aren't unique to just Houston. We've had issues at times in some of those areas. And how do we, minimize some of those runs? Well, take those empty possessions out. It might not seem like a big deal in the moment, but when you have 3 or 4 of those situations, you couple it with a bad foul, now a turnover. Those things really start to add up. Once they stack up, you end up in a 11-2 run. And we've seen that at times, and we're trying to find ways to minimize it.
What's the role, I guess, and responsibilities for a point guard in your system? Is there anything that maybe differentiates it from other teams and other systems?
I don't think so. I think in general, just, reading the flow of the game, understanding, how teams are guarding us. Also, understanding makes and misses, opportunities to push after a stop where there's no clear-cut advantage. Let's get our guys organized and spatially organized, get guys to spots before we initiate the offense. And then also reading kind of, all right, the guy's got a flow, he's got a rhythm. How do I get certain guys a shot in the spots that they're most efficient?
You like the lack of skills, I guess, generally forcing turnovers in relation to your defense. Is that something that you wish you guys did more of, or is that not necessarily an indicator of?
I don't necessarily know if there's a correlation between deflections. You could maybe say steals, but I don't know if it means you can gamble and take yourself out of position. I don't know if that's good for us as on the flip side. I think the most important thing is the hand activity. So now that teams aren't just window shopping and picking us apart, I think we can do a better job there. But in particular with pick and rolls, it's difficult with us being more in drop coverage. You're not going to have the same level of impact as you would if we're up to touch or blitzing. But I think overall, the overall hand activity is something that's controllable. I'm more concerned with that and less gambling for steals.
What's the process been like lately trying to get the defensive message to stick? Because I know earlier in the season you said, well, we could point to the first 10, 13 games, but since that's kind of further in the background, kind of what's it been like just trying to get the same principles to stick?
Well, I think the principles are in place. We have a lot of different parts. People forget Rui missed 30 plus games, didn't have training camp. So he's still kind of getting himself up to speed with different coverages. It's easy when, we're switching 1 through 4. We've done a lot of that with him. But now, if we start off the season, with our bigs in coverage, both bigs. And it's another layer for him now. We want to minimize the switching versus our big wings, your Giannis's, your LeBrons, guys of that nature. So it's just another area where he's just got to get up to speed. And it's not just him, it's Kyle, it's Denny rather, all those guys, an added layer to the defense. Adding KP, there's another layer. So it's no excuse, but nothing's really changed, schematically. It's just guys having enough reps.
Speaking of course, I guess, get a good first half against the Rockets. The offense generally struggled in the second half. What was different about him? Did they do something different against him? And what do you think in hindsight could have been done to sustain him?
No, I think, they were switching quite a bit. And we didn't necessarily reap the benefit of the post ups that we got the other night. But once again, when that doesn't work, I thought when we started to stagnate, and then we have to read, well, if that's not working, continue to move the ball, find the next action. It's not necessarily a play, it's the play after the play. And I think that's where we have to continue to, keep energy in it. And once that ball sticks, it's really tough for us to score.
Coach, we'll head over to Zoom. Chris Miller.
Hey, Wes, KCP was clearly frustrated after the game against Houston and mentioned that there are some guys on the roster that don't know the plays. Is that even possible 71 games in? And is that even correctable for the final games this year?
Yeah, it is correctable. And yeah, there are some guys who have struggled. Once again, KP hasn't played a lot with us. So, Ish has not played a lot with us. Sato has not played a lot with us. So there are some, miscues. That's just part of it. We've kind of had to deal with that throughout the season, through the reintegration of Rui and TB, through the, the trade scenario that we saw during the COVID. You had, 6 or 8 different bodies in here in a matter of 10 days. So all of that, it happens, it's not ideal, but trying to make sure that we continue to drill it, 5-0 script, script first coaches, just get a feel for how teams are guarding us. All those, layers help, but you cannot get enough repetition. And I think that's important, regardless of it's 11 games or, just a week, we have to continue to hit guys and make sure we can stay organized.
And in terms of guarding your yard, that's a pride thing. How important is that part of it, of just pride at this point of the year of just competing at the highest level?
That's a big piece, and overall, I think our guys have been very competitive. I think at times we don't have necessarily the details. And we saw, probably second half, fourth quarter, when you're dealing with teams that are, dynamic in nature or really good individual one-on-one players, if we don't establish a defensive tone early, they're going to throw a couple shots in, and all of a sudden they're shooting into a big basket. Now it's really tough. They made some tough step back individual plays, which it's tough for anyone to guard. It wasn't necessarily at the rim or in our paint, but we allowed that early, allowed them to play with a level of comfort, and now it's tough to shut off.
Christos.
Hello, Coach. Hope you're doing well. How could you explain the ups and downs of your team game by game? After the game against the Lakers, for example, you had a great first half and a bad second half against the Rockets. How could you explain that?
Well, it's something we're trying to figure out. We've seen this at times throughout the season. That's been the messaging all year. How do we find ways to sustain our play? And it's not just, first half, second half. Sometimes it's a 3 or 4 minute stretch within a quarter where, in particular the other night against Houston, I thought offensively we got a rhythm early, and we kind of let our foot off the gas, thinking that we could just kind of play it out. And that's the wrong team and certainly the wrong approach. That team plays free and easy for 48 minutes. And once they got a little momentum, we gave them life. They stole that, momentum from us, and now it just snowballed. So can we find ways to make sure that doesn't happen? It doesn't mean we're going to make open threes. It doesn't mean our offense is going to click, but how do we set a tone, especially on the defensive end early, and try to take teams away from what they're trying to do?
And also for the next games until the end of the regular season, in the next 11 games, what do you expect to see, and what kind of foundation you would like to build on those 11 games?
Well, the messaging is, regardless of win-loss, every time we step between the lines, those are valuable minutes, collectively, individually, and we can't afford to waste those minutes. I think it's easy to say, well, we're in this spot or the seating, this and that. You can't get consumed with that. we built this situation, and we have to find ways to continue to get something out of it. You know, with 11 games to play, those are valuable minutes for all of us. So I think that's the most important thing. Let's not waste opportunities, you know, when we get out there.
All right, coach, you are all set.